Hello, FPL managers! We are back with our FPL optimized podcast. I am Bas, the casual manager, and my co host is Sertalp, the data scientist. This is episode number 95 of the podcast, in which we combine analytics with the good old eye test. Data or grass, or data and grass? That's the question. We hope everyone could enjoy a good summer break so far and is ready for the new FPL season, which will kick off Friday next week, August 16th. Sertalp, how are you doing and are you ready for the new FPL season?
Yes, I think I'm ready for the FPL season. The break was nice, but it was also nice to follow Euros. I really
Yeah.
enjoyed watching the games. Besides that, I feel ready. I think break was, quite appropriate. I mean, I wouldn't say no to another month break from FPL, but at the same time, if it starts, I feel ready. But more
Okay.
than that, I
Good.
think people have heard about it or they have seen on Twitter that we are currently working on a new FPL tool that we want to bring to the market somewhere around early 2025. So roughly this mid-season. So I'm pretty excited about it. We have been working on it. It will be an analytical tool, and we hope it will be a very powerful product, and
Yeah.
it will have some features that is not currently even available in the FPL landscape. So I'm especially I think I can say I am more excited about that than FPL itself. So when people ask me about whether I have an FPL draft, I have been involved with FPL for the last few weeks, but my
Right.
efforts were more on the analytical development side than actually
Sure.
building a draft. But yeah, I feel
Yeah.
pretty excited. How about you? How
Yeah,
are
and,
you
and I think
feeling?
while you said that, I was thinking like because it's the start of the new season, and we might have some people who are listening to us for the first time. So maybe very high level, you should explain what you're doing or what we are doing here in the podcast, because I
Sure.
think most podcasts are more about what we call, let's say, eye test, right? We look
Mm-hmm.
at players, how they perform, and whether we want to pick them in our teams or not. But what we try to do here in this podcast is that we look really more at the data side of things, or at
Yes.
least that's what you're doing, and then using a so-called solver to
Mm-hmm.
find the optimal team. So maybe you want to briefly talk a little bit about that for people
Sure.
to
Sure.
understand.
Yeah, I would love to. So you're right. So FPL podcasts are mostly coming from a football background, and
Yeah,
they're like lately it's very popular to bring some analytical insights to it, right? So
yeah,
obviously you are picking players based on whatever you feel right. Like you are saying that yes, Haaland is 15 million, but I really want to have him. He scored a hat trick, and then they're also bringing some analytics to the table. Oh, like this is how many goals he's projected to score. But
right.
you and I are coming from a different kind of background because we both are working for an analytics company, SaaS, and we have been more involved with the analytics. Well, maybe I should also say it for myself. You are more of a football person than I am.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. So, but yeah,
Don't
I'm.
mention me, man. I'm
Yeah,
the
sorry.
typical grass manager.
Yeah. I feel like I'm more of a analytics person than a football fan. I will say. So
Yeah,
I was watching football, but at the same time, I feel like, oh, FPL is just a perfect combination for me to bring my mathematics background and then maybe play better than you.
yeah,
And so in this podcast, so that's the reason why we are a little bit different. We are coming from an analytical background or analytical point of view, and then we are trying to use maybe eye tests or how we feel about players at the same time. And well, playing analytically might mean different things to different people. There are lots of ways to play this game. You can use data in any way. There are lots of analytical approaches too.
yeah,
But I think the peak of the analytical approach is to use optimization. Optimization is essentially optimizing your decisions, and that's what we use for businesses. Like we do, like consulting at work. We provide some kind of this is the optimal decision you need to make to earn more money or like avoid disasters, stuff like this. And in FPL, it's similar. Which players are projected to bring in more points? We can
right.
turn that into decisions. And Solver is
Yeah,
essentially doing it. But
yeah,
I mean, it's really powerful. Like if you just play with a solver without thinking, you can still get a decent finish. And
Yeah.
I know people, when they hear, they get upset about it, but that's the reality because data is very powerful. But
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that just by using the solver, that's the end of it. Like, you are not going to spend any more second on it. People think
No.
it takes away the fun. But more than
No.
that, actually, it enables you to focus on important things like the strategy. Because when you get the projection data, when you put it into the solver, it suggests you certain moves. You can customize it, you can get more suggestions, but you need to tinker, you need to think about it. Like, do I really want to bet on this player? What's the alternative? If I do the alternative, do I lose lots of projected points? And sometimes
Yeah.
there's virtually no difference, so that you want to go with the second option, not the first option.
Right.
So analytics, I mean, managers, they get pretty good finishes over the last few
Yeah.
seasons, and obviously the quality of the prediction models, it has been improving, so it is a big reason why. But on
Yeah.
top of that, there are lots of subjective decisions you need to put, and the solver
Yeah.
is only capable of solving the problem based on what you feed into, and you can customize the input you are feeding. You can say stuff like, I don't want a premium goalkeeper. I just want to have cheap goalkeepers. I
Yeah.
want this premium player. I really want to have Salah in my team, or like I want to ban Haaland.
Yeah.
Stuff like these, it makes you customize your experience. At the same time, you
Right.
don't need to really spend too much time on that 4 million like defender that will sit on your bench. So Solver actually helps you to figure all that out
Yeah.
in a nutshell.
Yeah. Thanks for covering that. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you and I have been doing this for a few years now, right? A few years ago when
Yeah,
we
yeah,
met, and just a small anecdote. I think when we started this game, and you told me that you were actually not really watching any matches, and you were just basing your decisions on the data. I was really
sure.
quite shocked. I was like, "Real? Do such people exist?" But they do exist. And I think in the meantime, over the years, maybe you started watching a little bit more. And on the other hand, also for me, it's the vice versa effect. I'm traditionally more a football fan. I enjoy watching football. I enjoy playing football, and that's how I also base my decisions, mostly based on eye test. But also doing this podcast with you, of course, I've been learning more about data and analytics.
Yeah,
And that's, of course, also the purpose of the podcast. I think a lot of people find it interesting to understand that data side of it. And then,
yeah.
of course, it's up to everybody to decide whether they want to use it or not. Because as you said, different managers have different styles.
Yeah, exactly. And I just want to clarify one thing very quickly. Uh,
Yeah,
People will think that, oh, this nerd came and then he's talking about mathematics and analytics on FPL. But actually, I was also a football fan. I mean, I'm from
yeah,
Turkey, and like Turkey is known with their, football culture to an extent. I mean, very
definitely.
passionate fans. So I was watching football all my life, but I wasn't really watching Premier League that much. I mean, I was
Right.
I'm a Liverpool fan, but I was not paying attention. Even when
Yeah,
playing FPL, I trust more of my like analytical capability than my own eye test. I mean, I enjoy watching the game,
yeah,
but I don't
yeah.
try to draw any conclusions from what I'm seeing on the
Right.
pitch. So for me, eye test is just the fun side of it. I don't try to
Yeah,
like make it interfere with my decisions in FPL. But yeah, I
yeah.
enjoy the game. It's not like
No, but
analytics
that,
players
that's
are
that's
just
good that
on
you
front of
mentioned
the
that
screen.
because
Yeah.
because that's probably the definition of an analytical manager, right? You watch games, but you don't really base your decisions on it. You rely more on the data.
Yes, correct.
And I think a lot of FPL managers, they treat it in the opposite way. But again, everyone has their own style, and I think also depends on what gives you fun.
Sure,
And
sure,
I think for
exactly.
you, it's also this kind of mathematical challenge. And having said all of this, yeah, you built some really powerful tools and some powerful models. And then over summer, FPL changed some of the rules. So can you talk a little bit about that, like the impact of some of the rule changes and what you've been doing to maybe consider that in your solvers?
Yeah, certainly. So there are three big changes to FPL. The first one is point changes, like the goalkeepers get more points if they score a goal, and there are some bonus point updates. Uh, those are a little bit outside of my area. I mean, I don't do predictive modeling, so that those kind of impacting the projected points, but not what I do myself. The other two are important. The first one is now the capacity for free transfers is raised to 5. It was 2 before. And as you can see, like, this has really big implications. I mean, first of all, we have been always discussing about what's the value of a free transfer and what it means for a solver, because solver can think only optimistically. It doesn't have a sense of, oh, there's uncertainty beyond this period. You feed the projected points, and solver will almost always recommend you to make a transfer, like,
Yeah.
because there's no sense. So to prevent solver to make a transfer, so you use a threshold. You are saying something like, if the difference between the player I'm buying and selling, if it is less than 1.5, by the way, I'm very simplifying this,
Yep.
don't do it. Roll the free transfer, because I can do a better transfer maybe next week. So you use this threshold, but now that there are 5 free transfers, you know, the big question is, what's the value of a free transfer? Like, how do we actually decide to roll or make a transfer? So at this point, I will show the graphic here, and also for people who are just listening, I will try to explain. If your free transfer value is too low, then what's going to happen is you will always have around like 1 or 2 free transfers, maybe rarely 3 free transfers, but you will be around that region. And when the blanks and double game weeks hit, you will be forced to take hits, essentially. You will be in a bad position. But if your free transfer value is too high, this could be also your mental evaluation as a player. Like, for example, for a player like you, Bas, like, if you think, oh, I really want to have 5 free transfers because I will have so much flexibility, that's probably a bad way to think about it. Because when you have it, it means that you are not converting those free transfers into actual points, or projected points, I should say. And then it's impacting your season. Like, you can have 5 free transfers, but if you're not really using them for anything useful, then what's the value? The value is 0, actually.
Hmm.
So the value of free transfers are coming from 2 places. The first one is uncertainty in the current horizon. Like, whatever, like, I'm planning for 6 game weeks, let's say, next 6 game weeks. But you don't know which players will be rotated, which players will get injured. So you can start with the perfect game week 1 team, but maybe in game week 3, 2 of them will disappear. Like, they won't have any minutes. So that you need to use your free transfers, right? So that's the one value why free transfers are valuable. And the second part is the horizon beyond your planning horizon. If you might be looking at 6 game weeks, but then next week you will look the period between game week 2 and 7, and then you will realize, oh, in game week 7 this team has such a good fixture, maybe I should try to get a player from them. Then you need to use your free transfers. So because of these 2 reasons, free transfer has a non-zero value, but it is also not too high. First roll, though, is much more valuable than other rolls. Like, going from 1 to 2 is valuable. Going from 2 to 3 is also valuable, but less.
Okay.
3 to 4 is much less, and then 4 to 5 is essentially like very low. So an ideal free transfer value, I won't talk about exactly what that value is, but if it is just right, you should have usually 2 or 3 free transfers, falling to 1 free transfer quite often to make certain moves, but rarely go to 4 and 5. So if FPL actually capped the free transfer with 3, I think we were being we were talking about something similar as a strategy. So the reason why they went 5 is probably to bring people who forget about their FPL teams, and then when they come back, they will have more chance to catch up with others.
Yeah.
But for an analytical player, I don't see them going over 3 free transfers that often. Even though that's what people have been talking about, I feel like 3 free transfers is the sweet spot to target to stay. And 2 and 1 is just, again, it's fine. But and then we were making these changes on the solver side too. But yeah, these are the changes.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was thinking, again, with a new season, again, maybe some new players to the game, just again as a background, you get 1 free transfer a week, and then you can make another transfer, but it will cost you 4 points. So 4 points is quite, well, it doesn't sound like much, but it adds up. So it's quite a lot in this game. And it
Mm-hmm.
used to be like if you didn't use your transfer, then you would have two free transfers the week after, and two would be the maximum. So yeah, it couldn't go to three. It always was two was the maximum, and that rule changed. Now the maximum can be five. So if you don't use any transfers for a few weeks, then in week 4 or week 5 you can just make yeah, 4 or 5 transfers at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which sounds interesting, but I was thinking about it as well. Looking at my previous seasons, it was always already quite difficult to save one
Mm-hmm.
transfer, right? Because to your point, you will always face issues like injuries or rotation or fixture swings, whatever. So I was just thinking, like, how often will I really have 3 or 4 free transfers? I think it will be difficult to reach, but on the other hand, especially now at the start of the game where we are building our game week 1 team, I think it makes sense to have it in mind and try to build a team which in an ideal situation, yeah, you can keep for let's say 2 or 3 weeks without having to make transfers, because then it probably sets you up nicely for the start of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, 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 exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it is. I can also say that like I think most people will use their free transfers. Like it
Yeah.
won't change to like too many things for them. They won't be able to resist the temptation to bring the shiny players that scored a double digit return. So I mean, yeah, I mean that's the name of the game. I mean, you need to be patient in FPL to
Yeah.
be successful to a degree. And if you are making rash decisions, sometimes they work, but most often you will get penalized. And I mean,
Yeah.
from that perspective, for some people, this new FD cap won't change anything. And I also think that maybe like more than 90% of the people, they won't go to 4 or 5 free transfers if they are playing actively, because not
No.
doing anything is really difficult in FPL. You really
Yeah.
want to, every week you hate your team and you want to change a player,
Yeah.
so that it will be difficult. Maybe it could have been a different topic if, or like a discussion, if FPL introduced 2 free transfers every week. I mean, if they were giving us more free transfers, but the capacity, well, for most people, yeah, it won't really affect anything.
No, but I think you made a good point. I think we are very engaged, of course, right? We look at it every
Mm-hmm.
week. We also, of course, do our podcast every week, and I think a lot of our listeners are also really engaged. But a lot of managers are much less engaged, and maybe will just check their team, after a few weeks
Every
again,
few
and then
weeks,
it's
yeah.
probably quite nice when you see, oh, I have 3 free transfers. So probably for the engagement, it's a good thing. Yeah, and let's see how it works out. I think
Yeah.
it's also a nice thing that something changes, right? Especially for those of us who've been playing this game for a few years now. It's nice when there's something new and you need to maybe rethink your strategy and the way you play this game. So I think it's a
Yeah.
good change.
Exactly. And how have you prepared for the new FPL season so far?
Yeah, well, to be honest, I didn't do too much yet because I've just had a few summer holidays, a few weeks, European style. And but regardless, I mean, previous years when I was on holidays, I started already thinking a bit about FPL. But I think my lesson from that was that often it's just too early. It doesn't make too much sense. And
Mm-hmm.
also, I had that feeling this time when I was checking my Twitter, X timeline, and I was seeing everybody talking about FBL. I was like, guys, come on, it's still 4 weeks. What's the point? And I still have a little bit that feeling. We still have kind of 2 weeks to go. I think a lot of things can still change. Transfer market is open, still friendly games. Yeah, players are still moving around. So yeah, I made a first draft, and I also have been making some changes. Gradually every now and then when I have a new idea or when I see some new information. So I think I'll just keep making updates like that, like bit gradually. And of course, towards the end of next week, we'll be more busy to fix teams. And
Yeah.
yeah, my intention this year is also to not get too much influenced by everything that is being said and shared on the internet. We always read about these players that suddenly get playing time, and we should get them in our team. And then thinking last year, I think it was Bailey or all these players that we had in game week 1. and then disappointed.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to avoid that, not listen too much to what others are saying, just follow my own ideas and see
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
how that will work out. And yeah, let's see. So far, so
Good.
good.
Good. Good.
Yeah, and as we are preparing for FPL, we're also, of course, restarting our podcast. Right, that's what we're doing
Mm-hmm.
today, recording it. So yeah, it's of course also good to be back. Right,
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
our third season. I think I mentioned episode 95, so we're getting close to 100. Pretty exciting. And yeah, we talked a little bit about our podcast format for this year. So, Sertalp, do you want to maybe talk a little bit about how we want to approach it?
Yeah, in our first season, we were mostly focused on answering questions, but it was
Yeah,
also taking too much of our time. So we decided to do it like fixed content every week. That's
yeah,
what we did last season, and I think we enjoyed it, and also audience knew what to
yeah,
expect from us, like every week. It, I think, made us a better podcast. And this season we will continue it, but we realized that some of the discussions were not particularly like interesting, or I should say, it was talking to a minority. I believe. So we want to have like shorter episodes, more focused, so it will be easy to listen, easy to consume for people, and we will just talk about the actual stuff you want to hear about, like optimal teams, what are
yeah.
the captaincy options from models, and if there are any analytical insights for weeks to come. That's it. So we want to have again like a shorter episodes this season.
Yeah. That's the plan, and it sounds like a good plan to me. And so for today, let's jump into it and let's focus on the essentials. And of course, as said, it's still a little bit early days, also with regards to the data that we have available.
Mm-hmm.
But Sertalp, when you look at the data and you run your solver, is there already a few things you can share regarding optimal teams and optimal players we should be looking at?
Sure. So the first team I will share is the ideal Game Week 1 team. But, well, as I mentioned, like in the solver, there are lots of parameters you need to tune, and there are lots of knobs you need to adjust. It's all personal decisions. But a big talking point is to use wildcard in Game Week 6. The reason is this year they made, again, a rule change about wildcard and free hit. It used to be that when we use our wildcard, the next week we were starting from one free transfer. But they changed it this year. And also the fact that the free transfer capacity is 5 means that the wildcard is less valuable. And over the seasons, we have always seen this pattern that if you use your wildcard early, you gain lots of like team value. It's probably good for your team because your gaming team is, let's be honest, is usually not that good. You start with it and then you realize what kind of mistakes you did. So that's why there's kind of like a line of thinking to use wildcarding game week 6. If it happens, then you only need to solve for 5 game weeks, and that's what I did with this team. And also we combined two data sources, FPL Review and Mikael Tokvam. These two models were the most accurate over the last season, and that's why
Mm-hmm.
we are mixing these two here.
Okay.
And when we just mix and we just call the solver and also ask solver to not schedule any transfers. So this team is basically rolling all game weeks. We get this team. We have Ellison in the goal, Gabriel, Alexander Arnold, and Pedro Porro in defense. Eze, McNeil, Bruno Fernandes, and Gordon in midfield. Joe Pedro, Holland, Isaac in forward. And over the bench, we have Flecken, Andreas, Dunk, and Faes. So
Nice.
this team, I think it's very consistent. So again, the big question here is which premiums you will get in your team. Whether you will have Holland, you will have
Right.
Salah, maybe both
Yeah.
of them. Most models, I think, are leaning towards having Holland because his projections are, again, as usual, is pretty high.
Yeah.
And that's what I get from solving the problem as is with the raw data. We have a Holland team being optimal. What do you think about this team?
Um, yeah, interesting. And yeah, first thing I noticed, of course, Liverpool quite big in the defense with Trent and Allison.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they also have a quite good first fixture run, so that's
Mm-hmm.
probably relates to that. Gabriel with Arsenal, of course, Arsenal we know as a very reliable defense from last year. I just have some questions over who will play now, right? They bought
Yeah.
Calafiori from Italy. They also have Timber again, who's fit. And I remember the start of last season when Gabriel was suddenly dropped to the bench. So
Mm-hmm.
that makes me a little bit wonder, like, okay, how will they line up? So and I think that for that reason, maybe some people are going for Raya because then yeah,
Yeah.
you still have the Arsenal defense and you just have a safer option. And for the rest, yeah, maybe some popular names are missing that a lot of people are considering. Like there is no Son, there is no Palmer.
Mm-hmm.
City only one player with Haaland. There is no Saka. So yeah, and that's also quite nice. Of course, also each year at the start of the season that you need to make those decisions, right? And I think
Yeah.
there has been a lot of talks about the pricing of FPL, and probably it improved a bit compared to last year, in which you need to make more of these decisions. Like
Yeah.
what you said earlier, if you want to go for Haaland and Salah, it is possible. I have seen quite some people sharing such graphs. But of course, you will have to sacrifice somewhere else, either in defense or in the other midfield
Yeah.
options.
Yeah.
And that's quite nice that everybody is faced with these choices. And hopefully, we will see many different teams at the start of the season.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So this is the optimal team. I think you prepared also another version of it.
Yes. Let me show you the second one. Well, because I prepared the second one because most people don't like having premium goalkeepers.
Yeah.
And the question is, if I have a 4.5 million goalkeeper, then what kind of a team I can get?
Yeah.
So here we are forcing to spend essentially only 9.5 for the goalkeepers. Then
Okay.
when we do it, Solver goes for Flecken.
Yeah.
And then the main change here is that instead of Gabriel, it goes for Burn.
Gabriel. Yeah.
Yeah. And for the midfield, it replaces Gordon with Son.
Okay.
So that you have like two premium in this team and then some bench changes. But
Yeah.
yeah, these are the main changes. So as you see, like if you force something, it also enables
Yeah.
or like affects, I should say, the other parts of your team. But yeah, having a
Yeah.
Son is an interesting idea,
Yeah.
obviously.
Oh, it's good that you did it. And the other thing, maybe to say, with your first optimal team, it had a premium keeper, but it probably was also rotating goalkeepers.
Oh
And
yes.
and I think that's another thing. Maybe a lot of people. I mean, some people like it, some people don't. Personally, I don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
So I
It
will
was
just
only
go for
It was
just
having
one
Ellison
game.
and Flecken, but yeah,
Yeah.
mainly it was only one game week, which was using Flecken in against
Yeah.
Southampton in the third game week, because
Yeah.
that game week Liverpool is playing against Manchester United, so it's not the best
Yeah.
fixture.
No, that makes
Yeah.
sense. But still a decision to make because Flecken is 4.5, right? You could also
Mm-hmm.
go for a 4.0 goalkeeper and try to spend the
Yeah.
half million somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's again a
Exactly.
personal decision whether people prefer rotating goalkeepers or not.
Yeah. And
Um,
there's one more thing I want to mention here. Earlier, Let's Talk FPL, Andy asked me to basically scrape the Twitter feed and see which players are more popular on Twitter among the people. Because if you look at Isaac's ownership, I think he's owned around maybe like 50-ish%. But
okay.
when we check Twitter teams, his ownership is around 49%, almost 95. So it's just a big
Yeah.
difference between like almost everyone has him on
Yeah.
Twitter. And also Salah's ownership was around 70%. So even though we don't see Salah here, he was pretty popular. Although that one was before Haaland scored lots of goals and people's maybe opinions started to change. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, Twitter ownership is quite different from actual ownership, which is, again, just interesting to think. But
Yeah.
just going over that list, so the popular picks were Isaac and then Salah, Eze, Haaland, Gvardiol, Alexander Arnold, Nkunku, Son, and
Yeah.
Gordon. So
Okay.
we have some of these players here, but not all of them, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. All
Um,
right.
mhm.
Cool. Was there another
And
team that you prepared?
not a team, but Eric Garcia. It is Eric underscore K underscore Garcia on Twitter. He's a member of our Analytics Discord, and he ran these sensitivity analysis. So if you're not familiar with this, instead of using the solver once, which will give you a deterministic solution, it will always give you the same solution. You can perturb projections a little bit. You add some random noise and repeatedly solve the problem to see which players are actually more essential and which players are more subject to, your personal preference, if you put it that way. And two players appear in 100%, like in all of these different teams with under like noise. The first one is Pedro Porro, and the second one is Bruno Fernandes. And if we go over the positions, Ellison is picked in 55% of the teams, and the second most picked goalkeeper was Fabianski, although he's mostly picked as a bench goalkeeper. The third one is Raya, 30% selection in the lineup. And the other lineup goalkeeper you can consider is Vicario. And over defense, we have, again, Pedro Porro, 100% rate. And then Alexander Arnold, 75% of the teams he appears. And then Gabriel, and then Byrne. And over the midfield, we have Bruno Fernandes, 100%, and Eze, 90%, Saka, 75%, and Salah is 70%. So there is actually some like combinations where the Salah appears in lots of teams. And if we check forwards, we have Isaac with 90%, Joe Pedro 40%, Muniz 30%, and Calvert-Lewin at 20%. Also Haaland at 20%. So even though he's optimal, like if you look at the things deterministic, and if you don't schedule any transfers, if you include transfers, like if you're thinking that, I can use transfers to bring him in, then most of the time Solver doesn't start with him, which is an interesting insight, to be honest. So
Yeah. Maybe because Liverpool has some good fixtures, and wow, Salah always has been quite successful in game week 1, which I don't think it will be considered by the solver, but maybe it's in the data as well, of course. Yeah. All right. Yeah, and Bruno, 100%. I'm quite surprised about that because personally, I don't have him on my mind at all.
Okay.
But maybe that says more about me. But anyway, I remember last year that suddenly at the end I had Bruno and I had Rashford. Remember that? That was a popular
Yes.
strategy to go to Man United, and that really hurt me. So that's
I
one thing.
remember.
Yeah, but you never know. Yeah.
Some resentment towards Man United maybe from you.
Well, actually, I hope they do well because we still have a Dutch manager there, and Ruud van Nistelrooy is there, which I think is really cool. I hope they will do well. But so far, the preseason hasn't been looking too good. But yeah, that probably doesn't say too much. All right. Excellent. So I think we covered the optimal teams and the sensitivity analysis. And what we typically do is also we look at the captaincy options, even though maybe it's still a little bit early. But do you have anything already you want to share?
Yeah, I have prepared a captaincy table. In this one, we again mixed FPL review and Mikael Tokmam data. We typically show like the best captains, like model my model, but I think this year I'm more leaning towards just showing the average case because that's maybe more useful. We have Isaac for the game week 1 optimal captain at 7.42 EV, and the second option is Salah with 7.16. So there's almost like 0.3 difference between them. So Isaac is clear here. And then we have Son at the third place, 6.73. And then Saka, 6.5, almost 6.6. And then Haaland comes at 6.5. So these are the top 5 options. But yeah, if you're watching on YouTube, I listed more players even to consider perhaps. But yeah, there's a big hype around Isaac, and I feel like he's in terms of analytical approach, he's the optimal captain. At least with what we know so far.
It's also a home game for Newcastle against a promoted team against Southampton, and we know from last year that Newcastle was really successful at home mostly. So I think I can understand why he's showing up here as the number 1 captaincy candidate. Yeah.
And who are you close to captaining for Game 1?
Well, tentatively, I think I have it on Isaac. Do I? Yeah, I do. Yeah. I do.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, yeah. So in this case, I'm aligned to the data. That doesn't
Perfect.
happen very often. All right, excellent. So that is a bit of a summary of all the data points that we
Hmm.
typically want to look at. Was there anything else you wanted to look at today, Sertalp?
A very quick shout out to our Discord community. For
Yeah,
people who are not familiar, we have a Discord community on analytics. We call it FPL Analytics Discord community. And we started it how long ago? I don't even remember. But anyway, so we just passed 2,000 members in the community, which is
great.
a pretty remarkable milestone in my mind. I wasn't expecting community to get this big, to be completely honest. And it's very
Yeah,
active. Like if you consider joining, if you have any interest in analytics, I would like to invite you to join. We will share a link uh,
yeah. Yeah, I
below
just
the
wanted to
episode.
ask because I'm personally not really a Discord user. So if people are interested in joining, what should they do?
Yeah, there's a link. You just click on it, and
Okay,
then if you don't have a Discord account, you will
you'll
create a
add the link.
Discord account. But that's pretty much it. So when
Yeah,
you join, we kind of like encourage you to share an introduction about yourself, like what kind of person you are, like are you playing analytically, or like what kind of data you are looking from the Discord. But yeah, I mean it's a very active community. You will, I am sure,
yeah,
if you're interested in analytics, you will find something that will pique your
yeah.
interest.
And I think you have last year's winner in it, don't you?
Yes, we have also Jonas as a member. He's also
For
very
anyone
active.
interested, that was our final podcast last season, an
Sure.
interview with the FPL winner. So if you didn't see it, you can still find it back on our podcast channel and also on YouTube.
Yep. And before we finish, do you want to talk about your jersey?
Yeah, so I will try to keep up with, let's say, the tradition of wearing a different shirt every week, even though it's really difficult with a limited collection. So a shout out again to one of our listeners, Koen Visser, who reached out to me last year and he offered me a few of his shirts. So this is actually one I'm wearing today. It's one from Liverpool. It's the home shirt of 2007, 2008, so quite a while ago. But yeah, I decided to pick a Liverpool shirt because yeah, they've been looking quite impressive in the preseason, and it's also exciting with the new manager there,
Yep.
Arne Slot, of course, replacing Jurgen Klopp. So quite an exciting season for Liverpool to see how this new manager will work out. So far, so good. But again, preseason doesn't say too much. But I hope Liverpool will have a good season,
Yep.
and I'm sure you do too, right, Sertal?
Yes, yes, definitely.
All right, cool. Yeah, I'm happy that we kicked it off. So this was the first podcast of this season. I think it gives a lot of food for thought already for everyone to consider during the next week or so. We'll be back with one or two more podcasts until the game week one deadline. Good luck, everyone, with the tinkering. This season, we'll also have an FPL optimized mini league again, same like what we had last year. It was pretty exciting. You can join it via the new code, which is 9GXNDK. So we'll add that also in the notes, but it's
Hmm.
9GXNDK. So anyone who wants to join another mini league, please join this one. And in every podcast, we'll mention the top three every week of the mini league. So if you do well, your name will be mentioned. So that's it for today. You can subscribe to our podcast so you'll get notified when the next episode is out. And you can also follow us on X. For Sertalp, it's at Sertalp Bilal. And for me, it's at BelfiBB. And we also have the separate account for the pod, which is at FPL Optimized. And on top, you can also find us on YouTube.
And until next time, stay curious and stay analytical. Goodbye.
Goodbye.